Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are crawling back across the ages into a time when grass didn't exist, when rain came like memory, and when something cold-blooded ruled the open plains with the quiet confidence of a tank in a world of bicycles. You're standing at the edge of a continent that doesn't quite know what it wants to become, half desert, half swamp, all menace. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And hey, drop your location and your local time in the comments. Always curious where the tribe is tuning in from. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along the crust of an ancient savanna. The sun is older than usual here, low, angry orange, like a fruit left too long on a hot windowsill. There's no grass beneath your feet, just cracked stone and knuckle-sized ferns that rustle, like someone whispering a threat they don't plan to repeat. You step quietly, not because you think something will hear you, but because something might remember you. In this time, let's say somewhere around 95 million years ago, there are no lions, no hyenas, no humans trying to convince other humans to walk faster. Just the heat, just the dust, and just ahead of you something bigger than any of those things. It's out of focus now, a low silhouette basking in a dry wash. From this distance, it could be a boulder if boulders occasionally swiveled their heads to check the wind. You crouch, it moves. The first thing you notice is not its size. It's the calm. It does not flinch or freeze. It does not rise like a startled horse or slither like a snake. It merely rotates half-turn eyes landing on you the way a lens might focus on a candle. You're not prey, not yet. You're background, Shieldjaw. You won't hear that name on a science documentary yet, but that's what we're calling it tonight. A broad-headed monster that once walked the floodplains of Cretaceous Gondwana like a lion dipped in obsidian. Not quite the Nile crocodile, you know. This one's bigger, meaner, drier. Historians still debate whether it was a true crocodiliform or something adjacent, but you don't have time to split scales. You have time to back away. Maybe. You duck behind a log that was probably a tree when birds still had teeth. The air is thick with dust and tiny beetles with ambition issues. A dragonfly the size of a sandwich drifts past your cheek. Somewhere nearby, something moans a long-distance sound like a cello dying slowly. You don't see what made it. You suspect Shieldjaw did. Odd fact break. Did you know that prehistoric termites were so numerous and active, they may have influenced atmospheric carbon levels? So if your allergies act up here, blame ancient bugs. You inch closer. Shieldjaw hasn't moved. It basks, half in shadow, half in sun. Its armor is not decorative, no. These are osteoderm's bone plates fused into the skin like nature's version of medieval chainmail, but heavier, thicker, the kind of back you could mistake for volcanic rock. This is not a swimmer. This is a walker, a trampler, a planer of ground and vertebrae. The plains are quieter than you expected. There are dinosaurs nearby, you know this, but they're cautious. Maybe they smell him. Maybe they just remember. The air carries more tension than wind. You hear the buzz of cicadas that have never heard of civilization. You wonder if they're screaming for help or just because no one ever told them to stop. Shieldjaw yawns. You don't expect it. The mouth opens like a door to somewhere you've never paid rent. Rows of interlocking teeth. Some conical, others jagged, a few broken and blackened by use. This is not a killing mouth. It's a holding mouth, like a vice that learned to salivate. You realize it could hold you in place not to chew but to wait until something bigger arrived to finish the job. The sun drops lower. The shadows lean like tired drunks. You begin to understand why this place never fully cooled down. The land holds heat like secrets. And Shieldjaw. He's one of the oldest. Some scientists suggest these terrestrial crocs hunted like big cats, relying on ambush and stealth across dry terrain. Others say their mobility was overstated, that they mostly lay in wait. But looking at this beast now, no pond, no mud pit, no retreat, you start to believe the first camp. This is not a log with teeth. This is a god that forgot how to swim. He turns again, slowly rising on legs like iron stumps. Not belly dragging like today's crocodiles, but something in between. Something lifted. You see the muscles shift beneath armored skin like tectonic plates planning a coup. And just for a second you swear the horizon itself tenses. Then it moves. Not toward you. Something else stirs in the distance. The scene resets. The players rearrange. The planes hold their breath. You stay low, eyes wide, heartbeat slow. You're not part of this story yet, but the dust knows you're here. You lie so still, your nose begins to itch, but you don't dare scratch it. Ahead of you, the crocodile walks, not crawls, not slinks, not slithers, but walks. Upright, heavy. Its head low like a battering ram that got bored waiting for the wall. Its tail swings behind it with the slow menace of a clock that measures tension instead of time. The eyes are the worst part. Two golden ovals sunken deep beneath ridged brows scanning the plains like searchlights with contempt issues. They never blink. You expect something that dry to at least water its lenses, but no. These eyes do not close. They stare. Even when they're not looking at you, you feel them like heat from a stove you didn't know was on. Shieldjaw isn't just moving for fun. His posture tightens. His steps shorten. His tail stiffens. Something is nearby. You feel it too, the way the air quiets not from peace but from prediction. A herd, maybe. Something stupid enough to drink from the cracked clay of a dry creek bed that remembers wetter centuries. You adjust your position and try not to inhale a termite mound by accident. Now, here's the fun part. Ancient crocodilians like this one might have had elevated sensory organs on the top of their skulls, not just eyes and nostrils, but pressure pits tuned to the faintest ripple in the air. You move and it feels it. You breathe and it does math. You exist and it adds you to the ledger. The creek bed comes into view. It's dry mostly. Cracks spread across it like a puzzle missing half the middle. One puddle remains surrounded by hoofprints and claw marks. The prey arrived earlier. It drank. It left. Or maybe it's still close. Shieldjaw crouches. Not flat like a modern croc would in water, but high on haunches. His head remains lifted. His mouth opens a few inches. His eyes remain unblinking. You're not supposed to feel bad for him, but you kind of do. It looks exhausting, this eternal vigilance. No shade, no camouflage, just armor and patience. A walking fortress with a face like a meat grinder and the social life of a falling anvil. Some paleontologists suggest that creatures like Shieldjaw may have competed with large theropods, carnivorous dinosaurs for prey. The idea is divisive. Historians still debate whether crocodiliforms had territories that overlapped with apex dinosaurs, or whether they kept to the margins. But looking at him now standing in open terrain like he owns the lease, you suspect he didn't share well. A dry wind kicks up. Dust spirals. You squint and spot movement across the flatland. A cluster of ornithopods, plant-eating dinosaurs ambling toward the puddle. They're mid-sized, maybe 10 feet long, with beaked mouths and flappy crests that look like someone gave a kangaroo a party hat and regretted it. They move cautiously, nostrils flaring. One approaches the puddle. Shieldjaw does not lunge. He does not roar. He just waits. Odd fact break. Modern crocodiles can hold their breath underwater for over an hour. But prehistoric crocs, some of them lived in semi-arid environments where holding still was more important than holding air. It's not breath control. It's presence suppression. The ornithopod leans down to drink. Its friends keep watch. The wind dies. The light dims. Shieldjaw slides. Not forward, not fast, just a single step. The kind of movement that doesn't break posture. It's almost elegant. You imagine ballerinas watching and thinking, okay, but could she do that with bone armor and 500 pounds of thigh muscle? And then the stare. It lands right between the prey's shoulders, not just to measure distance. It's doing something else. Calculating risk, plotting trajectories. Or maybe it's just reminding the prey that it's temporary. The ornithopod jerks its head up. For a second, everything pauses, like a dream you're not sure you want to finish. Then they bolt, all at once. A flurry of legs and screeches and dust. The puddle explodes in muddy panic. Shieldjaw doesn't chase. He doesn't even flinch. He just watches. Another blinkless study in loss. You feel a tiny knot in your chest. That was his chance, and he let it go. But then he turns his head slightly, because not all of them ran. One, the youngest, still confused, feet planted wrong, staring back like it forgot what fear was supposed to feel like. Shieldjaw lowers his belly, not to flatten himself, but to push. One lunge, just one. It happens faster than your breath. The croc doesn't gallop. It thrusts, like a snapping drawbridge. One motion forward, dust trailing behind like wake from a shipwreck. The juvenile tries to turn. Too late. The mouth opens wide, teeth flash like fossilized knives and closes around a leg. Not crushing, holding. The little dinosaur wails. Not from pain, but from realization. The rest of the herd is gone. It's not dead, but it has stopped mattering. Shieldjaw adjusts his grip, slowly, like he's worried he'll drop it. The eyes remain open. You swear they flick towards you, not in threat, but acknowledgement. You watch frozen as he begins to drag his prize back toward the shadows of a rock outcrop. Not in a hurry, not triumphant, just deliberate. You think of lions. You think of bears. You think of everything that roars before it kills. This is different. It's not about dominance. It's not about fear. It's about never blinking. You follow at a safe distance, which is to say, not safe at all. Shieldjaw drags the limp body of the ornithopod by one hind leg, its beaked head bumping along the cracked clay like a toy someone's decided to bury. You hear the faint squeak of bone on rock, the occasional flap of skin catching air like a deflated kite. The sound is unpleasant, in the same way forgotten memories are familiar but sour. He doesn't stop until he reaches a low rise marked by boulders and the half-melted skull of something that probably used to be smug. Here, the light angles just right across Shieldjaw's back, and for the first time you really see it. His armor is not pretty. It's not sleek. It's used. Lumps and ridges bone fused to bone in no real order like tectonic plates with attitude. There are scratches so deep you can stick a finger in. Dents that weren't made by time but by teeth. Parts of him are missing. The tip of the tail is slightly off, a toe gone. One shoulder bears a wound that looks like it never fully healed. You wonder what did that, then you wonder if it's still around. Historians still debate whether creatures like Shieldjaw were solitary or loosely social, if they tolerated others of their kind, or if every meeting was just a stare-off that ended in trauma. But looking at these scars, the answer seems clear. He's met others. He survived. That's his resume. He positions the body beneath a sloped rock and begins the world's slowest disassembly. No ripping, no enthusiastic chewing, just deliberate muscle-powered shifts. A leg here, a neck twist there, a rib crack that echoes a little too nicely. You feel a twinge of guilt watching, like you're observing something sacred, or gross, or both. Odd fact, break crocodiles can digest bone. Not just chew it. Digest it. Their stomach acid is strong enough to break down turtle shells, bird beaks, and apparently irony. Shieldjaw likely had the same internal furnace letting him extract calcium and other minerals from the very skeletons of his prey. The vultures, or what passes for vultures in this epic, arrive quickly. Not birds exactly, More like pterosaurs the size of lawn chairs, flapping down in lazy arcs to land a few yards away. They circle, waiting. Some hop forward, testing boundaries. Shieldjaw raises his head just once. The effect is instant. They retreat like interns caught snooping through a supervisor's email. You sit on a rock and try not to gag. The smell reaches you finally, a mix of sunburnt blood and whatever dinosaurs ate that made their fat so oily. The kind of stench that settles in your clothes and tries to unionize. Shieldjaw eats slowly, like time isn't real. You notice he doesn't close his eyes once, not to blink, not to savor. The golden stare remains fixed either on the carcass or the horizon. There's no joy here, no hunger panic, just necessity with a hinged jaw. You remember something that crocodiles don't chew. They thrash, they death roll. They dismember via torque. But Shieldjaw, he doesn't roll, he doesn't thrash. He just pulls, tightens, waits. Like even digestion is a war of attrition. The sun arcs downward. The heat begins to pull away from the ground, leaving behind a strange hush. The plains settle into evening, and the sky blooms red-orange like an embarrassed bruise. The scavengers return a little braver this time. One flaps its wings too close. Shieldjaw spins with astonishing speed, his tail sweeping like a wrecking ball. The pterosaur backpedals, frantically letting out a squawk that sounds like a car horn having a nightmare. He doesn't chase. He doesn't need to. He's already told them, "This is mine." You can hear it in the silence, in the fact that nothing touches the carcass unless he lets it. You wonder what it's like to be the center of a circle without ever having to raise your voice. There's something ritualistic in the way he eats. Not religious, more like ancient etiquette. A series of practiced motions that have been perfected over millions of years of extremely aggressive feedback. It's not just a meal, it's a statement. And then suddenly he stops. You freeze too. He turns his head slowly toward the east. Something out there, something big. You don't see it, not yet. But he does. The carcass is forgotten now. A half-finished memory left under a rock. He rises. Not all the way, just enough. Enough to signal a shift. You listen. Nothing. No footfalls. No wind. But the silence feels different now. Denser, charged. The vultures sense it too. They scatter in chaotic flaps and screeches, leaving feathers like insults in the dust. Shieldjaw doesn't run. He just begins to move sideways, away from the kill, like a thief who already took what he needed and knows when not to linger. You catch a glimpse of his belly as he turns a lighter, softer underlayer, protected by sheer bulk. It's stained, streaked, dust-covered, but it's unbroken. That's important. That's survival. You take one last look at the carcass. It already looks ancient, picked over, flattened, irrelevant. The kind of story that doesn't get told unless you know where to look. Then you follow the armored one who never blinks, never hurries, and never leaves anything behind unless he meant to. You trail him from a careful distance, one that feels respectful, like walking behind a king who never asked to be followed. Shieldjaw moves across the dry plain with the certainty of someone who has already memorized the land. He doesn't check behind him. He doesn't check above. He simply exists, and the world makes room. You expected a crocodile to stick to the water. That's what your modern brain full of YouTube nature clips and zoo visits keeps whispering. They wait in rivers, it says. They strike from swamps. But Shieldjaw doesn't follow that script. He is waterless. He is drought-colored. He hunts in sunlight beneath open skies without the dignity of camouflage, which makes it worse, honestly. He doesn't hide, he just chooses. Up ahead, a herd of ceratopsians makes its slow passage across the plain. They're not the fancy triceratops with the superhero horns. These are smaller, shaggier-looking, likely Zuniceratops or some cousin with an unpronounceable name and bad posture. Their heads are too big for their legs. Their frills are chipped and splotched. They move like old parade floats pushed by wind. Shieldjaw stops, lowers himself against a ridge of flattened sandstone. His eyes remain above the line. The rest disappears behind dust and dried grass. He becomes terrain, not because he changes, but because the world forgets to notice him. You crouch behind a log, swatting away insects with ambitions bigger than their wings. You watch the herd. The adults shuffle along, snorting softly, flanks twitching. The juveniles dart and flail like nervous little lawnmowers. They aren't exactly graceful, but they're alert. They know something hunts them. They just don't know what. Shieldjaw waits. Minutes pass. Stillness settles. The herd slows near a fossilized stream bed crusted with white salts and bone shards. The smallest one steps out ahead, its frill bobbing like a broken crown. You wince. That one has nature documentary sacrifice written all over it. But Shieldjaw doesn't move. He lets them go. What? You blink. He doesn't. The herd continues, clumsy and alive, vanishing slowly over the hill. You whisper to no one. That was your shot. But he doesn't answer. He just lifts himself again and begins to walk, not toward the herd. Away. Historians still debate whether prehistoric crocodilians like Shieldjaw were true predators or opportunistic scavengers. More scavenger than assassin, more garbage man than gladiator. But this doesn't feel like scavenging. This feels like restraint. Maybe he wasn't hungry. Maybe he's already eaten enough today. Or maybe he knew something you didn't like, how a second herd usually follows the first. You wait. You listen. Nothing. Except for a sound you almost don't hear: hooves. Not close. Not confident. But consistent. Smaller. Lighter. A second herd. You mouth. Okay, fine. You win. Odd fact break. Some prehistoric crocodiliforms developed forward-facing eyes, not the typical sideways glance of today's crocs. That might suggest some degree of binocular vision, good for depth perception. Good for hunting on land. Good for knowing exactly how far a mistake can run before it stops being worth it. The new herd is quieter. No ceratopsians this time. These are hadrosaurs, duck-billed, slope-backed, and every one of them looks like it's seen a ghost and decided to keep walking. They don't talk much, just shuffle and snort and look suspiciously at the wind. You don't see Shieldjaw anymore. You scan the horizon. Nothing. And then something changes. A small shudder in the air. Dust that lifts when it should have settled. The feeling of movement without motion. You spot it. The ripple of armor just beneath a ridge. A slow roll forward. The glint of unblinking gold. Shieldjaw emerges from nowhere. Not fast, not loud, just present. Like he was always part of the background until the background gave him permission to matter. One of the hadrosaurs notices him. It stiffens, snorts. But it's too far from the others. Too alone. Shieldjaw shifts direction. He doesn't charge. He strolls. You're suddenly aware of how fast you can walk if you don't need to sprint. It's like the earth itself wants you to arrive in one piece, so it just tilts forward slightly under your weight. That's how he moves, no wasted effort, no rush, just closing the distance like a decision. The hadrosaur turns to bolt, but Shieldjaw was never chasing this one. Another hadrosaur closer to the brush flinches. That's the real target. The one that panicked early. The one that zigged before it zagged. Shieldjaw lunges not forward, sideways. He sweeps across the plain like a falling wall. Impact, dust, silence. You wait for the squeal, the screech, the horror. Nothing comes, only the sound of hooves pounding away. You peek over the ridge. Shieldjaw stands tail raised, 1 foot pinning something down. The hadrosaur struggles beneath him, legs flailing like broken windmills. He doesn't even use his mouth yet. He just waits for it to stop being interesting. Then calmly, he lowers his jaws. The hadrosaur goes still. You sit back and try to unclench your hands. You've seen predators hunt before. In videos. In real life. There's usually drama. chases, barking, yelling, teeth and blood and bragging. This was paperwork. Signed, stamped, filed. Shieldjaw lifts the body, carries it 2 steps, drops it. Then he does something you don't expect. He lies down. Not over it, not beside it. Just nearby. Like a cat sitting beside a warm laptop. Like the kill is not the point, like he's giving the land time to catch up. You whisper, "What are you?" But he's already answered. He's the hunter who doesn't need a river. The lion with no roar. The judgment that comes in silence. You spend the night on a slab of ancient sandstone watching Shieldjaw, the way someone might watch a landslide from a very safe distance, or at least pretend it's safe. The stars above you don't twinkle. They glare. There's no moon tonight. Just sky and silence and the occasional shriek of something far away, dying in a creative new way. In the dark, Shieldjaw barely moves. He lies next to the fresh kill, not guarding it exactly, but not leaving either. The hadrosaur is already stiffening. Insects you've never met and will never catalog begin their sacred little dances along its soft spots. You think about sleep, but sleep has rules. It likes warm beds and a complete absence of prehistoric apex predators. So you just sit there, awake, listening. At some point, maybe hours in, maybe minutes, Shieldjaw stands. He turns his head to the left, then the right. Not like he's checking for danger, like he's calculating angles. Then, without warning, he lifts a foot and begins to walk in a slow, deliberate circle around the body. Once, twice, 3 times. What is this? A crocodile funeral? A territorial dance? Nope, it's logistics. On the 4th circle, he stops beside the tail, nudges. It adjusts his posture and drags the kill 20 feet to a depression in the ground that you hadn't even noticed. A shallow basin. Not a nest, not a den, just a place where the earth dips, like it remembers something heavy once slept here. He deposits the body and lowers himself beside it again. And then you see them. The footprints. Everywhere. Not fresh, but not ancient either. Pressed deep into the clay rimmed with cracks. Massive. 4-toed. Patterned like a repeat broadcast of the same slow sermon. Shieldjaw has been here before, many times. You've stumbled into one of his stations, a place where he feeds, rests, and leaves behind the proof. Each footprint is a fossil in training. Each one tells you the same story. This isn't a wanderer. This is a strategist, a planner, a predator with routes. Historians still debate whether ancient crocodilians had territories in the same way modern mammals do, but the evidence is mounting. Repeated trackways, kill zones, resting areas. It's not random, it's remembered. You crouch beside one of the prints. It's the size of a manhole cover. You place your hand inside it and feel the difference in pressure. It's not just a dent, it's a decision. The toes splay slightly forward. The center pad is deep. There's a small groove where the claw drags slightly. It's all so specific, so intentional. And here's the odd fact for tonight. Did you know crocodiles today have taste buds on the roofs of their mouths that may help them decide where to bite their prey? That's not something you ever think about. Reptiles and taste, but it's there. Which makes you wonder, did Shieldjaw prefer certain legs, certain flanks? Was he picky? Back at the basin, the feast continues, but it's not urgent. Shieldjaw takes a bite, rests, watches the dark. Another bite, another pause. It's as if he's not eating to live, but living to eat correctly. There's an elegance to it, like he knows the world is watching and he's trying to be polite. You wonder if he gets lonely. It's a dumb thought, but there it is. He's big. He's armored. He's apex. But everything avoids him. Everything leaves when he arrives. Even the scavengers have a curfew around here. You've seen tyrannosaurs share kills. You've seen packs of dromaeosaurs squabble like siblings. But Shieldjaw, always alone. Then again, maybe that's by design. You start to count the footprints again. There are dozens. not all facing the same way. Some are old, baked into rock. Others fresher, pressed into dirt like invitations, all leading here, to this hollow, this circle, this silence. The plains stretch outward, pretending they have no memory. But you see it now. This isn't just land. It's a pattern. Shieldjaw isn't just surviving, he's sculpting time. And you're standing in one of his brushstrokes. Suddenly, he lifts his head sharply. You freeze. He turns slightly, not toward prey, not toward threat, toward the wind. Something has changed. A new scent. A distant vibration. You hear nothing. But he does. He rises fully, steps out of the basin. The hadrosaur carcass remains behind, not hidden, not guarded, just dismissed. He begins to walk again. Not in panic, not in chase, just onward. You follow. He moves up a ridge this time. Across gravelly flats where the stones crunch in rhythmic beats. Even his feet sound different here, like drums through sandpaper. The sky is starting to pale with false dawn. A smear of purple outlines the horizon. The air grows thinner, colder. Not freezing, but enough to remind you this was once desert. Once floodplain. Now something undecided. At the top of the ridge, he stops. And sits. Not lies, not crouches. Sits, back legs folded beneath him. Tail curled like a comma. Front claws resting on the rock. He gazes outward. You sit beside him. Don't laugh, it just feels right. Not close, of course, not suicidal, but near enough to feel the shared wind. The sky above is streaked with stars, some fading, some pulsing defiantly. The earth below is shadowed but awake. And between the two, a crocodile in armor waits for no one and remembers everything. There's a calm here. Not peace exactly, more like equilibrium. Like the land knows he's watching, and won't dare move until he says so. The sun creeps over the rim of the world like it's not sure anyone asked for it. Pale light touches the rocks first, then the ridges, then the basin behind you where a partially eaten hadrosaur is already stiffening under a veil of flies with doctoral ambition. Shieldjaw doesn't move. You sit near him wrapped in the kind of stillness usually reserved for funerals and cliff edges. Then you hear it. Not a roar, not a screech, just the soft percussion of hooves. Far below, another herd is arriving, horned ones this time. Larger, bulkier, with shields on their heads and horns curved back like the words of someone who never forgets a grudge. Maybe Pachyrhinosaurus, maybe something we haven't named yet. Paleontology is a long, slow argument in a dusty room. The herd spreads out, cautiously snuffling the earth. Their eyes are wide-set, peripheral-focused. Their frills rise and fall like fans at a gladiator match. Shieldjaw shifts his head by a single degree. You feel it more than you see it. The attention, the measuring. But he doesn't rise. Not yet. Instead, he watches them like someone watching the ocean, patient, unreadable, just waiting for the right wave. The wind shifts, dust coils and breaks apart between you and the herd. One of the horned dinosaurs turns its head and freezes. Shieldjaw hasn't moved, but it sees him now. The stillness becomes electric. The herd reacts as if struck by a shared thought. A ripple of muscle and instinct. They begin to backpedal, not bolting, not panicking, just reversing. Shieldjaw blinks, yes he does blink just once, and that's when you know it's begun. He rises, not in a hurry, not dramatic, but like a curtain going up on a play you didn't pay for. His back hunches slightly. His claws scrape softly across the stone. One step, two, and then he launches. It's not a sprint. It's not a leap. It's a shift in gravity. Like the plane itself decided to slide beneath him and shove him forward. The herd scatters. One horned dinosaur stands its ground, snorting like a truck with a broken muffler. It lowers its head, paws the dirt. You whisper, don't. But it does. Shieldjaw closes the gap in 8 steps. No wasted motion, no snarl. Just momentum. The horned one lunges and misses. Shieldjaw sidesteps. That's the first time you see it, that this isn't just brute strength, this is choreography. He lets the horn sail past his shoulder, ducks beneath the frill, and hooks with his forelimb. Not claw's elbow, like a judo throw in slow motion. The dinosaur stumbles. Shieldjaw whips his tail sideways, not to hit, to unbalance. The horned one falls. The herd is gone. You barely notice them leave. Now it's just two giants in the dust. Shieldjaw climbs on top of the stunned opponent, not a wrestling pin, but an anchor. His weight does the talking. The horned one struggles, tries to rise. Shieldjaw lowers his mouth and latches onto the neck frill, not biting deep, not killing yet, just holding. You've seen crocodiles do the death roll. This isn't that. There's no water to hide the chaos. Here everything happens in the open. The frill snaps, the horns thrash, dust clouds bloom around them. And then stillness. Shieldjaw lets go. The horned one breathes barely. It twitches, but it doesn't rise. He steps back. That's when you realize it wasn't about the kill. This was a message. This was control. Odd fact break fossilized crocodiliform tracks suggest they could maneuver with surprising agility on land. One specimen even shows signs of a pivoting movement mid-stride, essentially a prehistoric sidestep. So yes, Shieldjaw's judo throw. Plausible. Beautiful. Rude. Shieldjaw returns to the ridge, his tail swinging like punctuation. The herd has vanished into the morning heat. The wounded one eventually drags itself up and limps away bloody but alive. You look at Shieldjaw and think, this isn't about hunger, it's about power. Not the power to destroy, the power to choose not to. The vultures return, sensing there's nothing left for them. They circle the basin again, find the remains from yesterday's kill, and begin their grim cleanup job. One swoops too close. Shieldjaw snaps his jaw not to catch it, just to remind it of the terms. Historians still debate whether crocodilians displayed territorial behavior in the same sense as big cats. But this ballet of domination feels deliberate. He's not defending space. He's curating an audience. You wipe sweat from your brow, though the air isn't hot anymore. It's tension. It's the kind of heat that lives in the chest. Shieldjaw sits once more facing the ridge, surveying. His body still hums with the energy of movement, but his breath is slow. Controlled. No panting, no need to recover, like he's always halfway to ready. And suddenly, it strikes you. He's not just part of this ecosystem, he's the axis. The grass doesn't grow under him. The scavengers wait on his timing. The prey shape their roots around his possible location. Even the weather dust storms, heat waves seem to respond to his posture. He doesn't rule the plane. He anchors it. And you? You're just lucky he hasn't decided your bones would make a good footrest. The midday heat has no interest in subtlety. It arrives like a weight thrown across your shoulders, dense and pressing, turning every breath into a chore and every rock into a warning. You press your back against a sun-warmed boulder and watch Shieldjaw slump beside the hollow carcass of yesterday's hadrosaur like a dethroned emperor with no interest in politics. He doesn't eat right away. Instead, he listens. His eyes, golden and hooded, stay fixed on the horizon while the wind picks up and the sky begins to churn. Far above the vultures, gather again, though you know they're not vultures, not really. Pterosaurs of some kind, their wings whispering secrets to each other as they circle. They've learned their place here, and it's not close. A smaller one dives too early. It tries to land on the hadrosaur's back, eyes gleaming with hunger or foolishness, or both. It perches there for all of 6 seconds before Shieldjaw lifts his tail and flicks it upward like a god swatting a fly. The pterosaur shrieks, flails, and crashes into a tree that has definitely seen better eons. He didn't even look. Odd fact break. Some species of modern crocodilians will return to old kills and cache them underwater, letting them soften over time. This helps break down the flesh, but on dry land there's no swamp pantry. Shieldjaw lets it rot in open air, and somehow that's worse. You creep closer just a little. Your rock offers some shade, and anyway, he seems far more interested in the atmosphere than you. And what an atmosphere! The sky is thickening now. Dust rolls across the ground like dry fog. Thunder grumbles somewhere beyond the ridge, but it's not the dramatic clapping kind, more like a stomach growling across time zones. The plains stretch empty in every direction, yet you can feel things moving, things in, hiding things, watching. The scavengers begin to bicker. The scent of decay is rising, sticky sweet, and oddly metallic, like someone poured syrup over a rusted pipe. One of the pterosaurs tries to land again, this time beside the head. Shieldjaw lifts his mouth from the ground, makes a low, vibrating grunt, and the air stops. Just stops. Every flapping wing halts mid-beat. Every insect backs off. Even the wind seems unsure. That sound, barely audible, closer to a tremor than a growl, is enough to cancel the world. You don't know if it was a warning or a lullaby. It doesn't matter. The message was mine. You watch Shieldjaw finally resume feeding. There's nothing savage about it. No frenzy. He bites, he pulls, he waits. The meat peels away in long, reluctant strips. His teeth aren't even especially sharp anymore. You can see some are worn rounded at the tips, like old tools used too often. But they're not for slicing. They're for gripping, for holding, for never letting go. He pauses only when a larger scavenger arrives, a newcomer. From behind a hill comes something unfamiliar. You lean forward. It's not a pterosaur. It's not a dinosaur either. It walks low. Its body is slender, built for running. A prehistoric mammal, maybe no too early. Whatever it is, it has no horns, no wings, and a lot of nerve. It steps close. Too close. It circles the far side of the kill, sniffing, calculating. Shieldjaw watches it with slow, unblinking attention. He doesn't lift his tail this time. He doesn't need to. The silence will handle that. The newcomer, let's call it hopeful, takes one more step. Shieldjaw moves. You don't even see the strike. One moment. Hopeful is standing there, ears twitching. The next, it's on the ground, crushed beneath one of Shieldjaw's forelimbs. Not eaten, not torn, just ended. He doesn't finish it off, doesn't even look at it again. Instead, he resumes feeding. The vultures know better than to move. You now, sweating, despite the wind, begin to understand why the bones left behind by these creatures always seem afraid. It's not just death, it's the deliberateness of it. The calm with which Shieldjaw chooses who matters and who doesn't. Historians still debate whether this particular genus, if we even have a proper one, should be grouped with the Cebitids, the land-stalking crocs of the Cenozoic, or if it's part of some older lineage, a failed experiment in apex terrestrialism. What's clear is the Earth was once ruled not just by things with feathers and teeth, but by this walking armored patience. And yet he's aging. You can see it now. The worn teeth, the stiffness in the hind leg, the way his left eye blinks just a moment slower than the right, the scars that no longer fade. You wonder how long a creature like this lasts. 10-year 2050. He probably doesn't know, and he probably doesn't care. You see the vultures shift again. Not for Shieldjaw this time. For something else. Storm clouds. Thick, black, and crawling across the plain like an army of shadow. You can smell the rain now, earthy, electric, inevitable. Shieldjaw lifts his head once more, tilts it toward the sky. Rain. It hits in soft plinks at first. Then harder, louder. The scavengers take off. The basin begins to fill. And Shieldjaw. He stays where he is, letting the water trace the grooves of his armor dripping off the end of his nose like ancient punctuation. The hadrosaur is gone now, stripped to bone. The new carcass, the hopeful intruder, remains untouched. But you already know it's not about hunger. It's about presence. You back away slowly, your feet slipping in the fresh mud, the smell of rain mixing with blood and dust, and time. Shieldjaw doesn't follow. He never would. He's already where he needs to be, and the vultures, wet and angry above, scream at the sky knowing they won't get their share today. The storm doesn't so much arrive as reclaim. like it's been waiting just off stage for days rehearsing and now it's finally time for its entrance. The sky darkens in seconds. The plains vanish behind veils of water. And Shieldjaw, he disappears. Not quickly, not dramatically, just gradually. You watch him rise from the basin, water pouring off his back in rivulets, armor glistening like molten basalt. His steps don't splash, they press, pushing shallow craters into the already softening earth. He walks into the rain without so much as a glance at the sky. It's not a reaction. It's a return. You scramble after him, shielding your eyes from the downpour, slipping more than once on slick clay. Lightning flashes briefly, outlining the silhouette ahead, long body, low head tail, dragging a sentence behind him that the wind doesn't dare erase. By the time you catch up, the landscape has changed. What was dust an hour ago is now river. Ancient gullies swell with rushing water. Rocks hiss beneath sudden currents. And ahead, Shieldjaw steps into it all like a king returning to court. He's not running. He's blending. Within minutes, the world is fog and torrent and echoes. You lose him once, then twice. You catch only fragments, ripples. Too organized a tail sliding over slick stone, the vague impression of golden eyes through curtains of rain. You press yourself against a rock ledge, coughing rainwater, unsure if you're soaked in awe or fear or both. There's a new scent now, mud, blood, ozone, and something ancient. Not death, not decay, something older. Memory. Odd fact break. Crocodilians have a transparent third eyelid called a nictitating membrane that protects their eyes underwater. It is possible that prehistoric terrestrial crocs retain this, even when walking through rain. So Shieldjaw, yeah, he's watching everything. Especially you. You spot him again, barely a darker smear against a backdrop of silver gray. He moves between petrified logs, steps over a half-submerged bone pile, and pauses near what looks like a collapsed burrow. Then he vanishes, like fog folding in on itself. You wait. Nothing. Not even sound now, just the distant grumble of thunder and the slap of heavy drops on puddles growing larger by the second. You move forward slowly. The mud grabs at your boots, the ground breathing in bubbles. You follow the trail not of prints this time, but of absence. He leaves behind spaces that no longer feel inhabited, just touched. And then another sound, a low rumble, but not thunder. This one's closer. You freeze. It happens again. A huff, a chuff, like a breath dragged over gravel. You turn. There, between two sloped rocks, Shieldjaw reappears, covered in mud. Camouflaged so perfectly it makes you question if you ever really lost him, or if he just stepped out of your awareness for a bit like a magician pausing a trick for dramatic effect. He's watching you again, eyes level, blinking once slowly, but he's not approaching, he's not stalking, he's judging, and maybe not you. Maybe the world behind you. You turn, heart thudding. In the mist behind you something moves, not Shieldjaw, something else, another shape. You can't quite make it out. A figure with longer limbs, upright, moving fast. A dinosaur, a predator, not the lumbering kind, the graceful kind. Feathers flick in the rain, flashes of crimson and ochre. Clawed hands, a long tail cutting arcs through fog. The eyes gleam, hunter's eyes. Shieldjaw shifts slightly, lowers his head, and you realize what's happening. This isn't a chase. It's an ambush. But not for prey, for competition. Historians still debate whether crocodiliforms and theropods directly competed. Evidence suggests some overlapped in niche, especially in dry environments where water was scarce and prey migrated seasonally. But few fossils tell us how they interacted. You're about to witness it. The theropod circles. Eyes lock it, not on you thankfully, but on the basin. The kill site. The scent. It's claiming a meal it thinks is unguarded. And Shieldjaw, he waits. Lets the rain do the talking. Lets the wind cover the scent. Lets the moment ripen. The theropod makes its move, stepping into the basin. Nose low, body tight with readiness. It doesn't notice the mud craters behind the stone, doesn't smell the breath in the wind. And then Shieldjaw moves. Fast. Faster than you've ever seen. He lunges not in a straight line, but in a wide arc flanking the intruder like a tidal wave changing direction mid-surge. His jaws open wide. The theropod turns too late. They collide. No roar. No scream. Just impact. And the wet crunch of centuries colliding. You flinch. When the spray of mud and blood settles, Shieldjaw stands over the intruder who is still twitching, neck bent, wrong eyes wide with surprise rather than pain. There's no finish, no flourish, just certainty. Shieldjaw doesn't kill to survive. He survives to remind. He drags the broken body into the basin next to the stripped remains of the hadrosaur. Two trophies, one earned in hunger, the other in message. He curls beside them, tail sweeping a half circle through the mud eyes half-lidded. And finally you understand, he doesn't disappear into storms because he's hiding. He is the storm. You stay absolutely still for what feels like a week. The rain continues its monologue, soaking every inch of you, but you don't care. You're staring at Shieldjaw now, really staring as he crouches beside his dual trophies like a monster in repose. Not triumphant, not exhausted, just recalibrating. And then his head tilts ever so slightly. His mouth opens, and you see them, the teeth. You thought you knew what crocodile teeth looked like. Cones, daggers, simple spears for stabbing. But these are different. As the light shifts, his jaw yawns wide, and you see that each tooth is subtly curved not just backward but inward like fishhooks. Traps within traps. And not uniform either. Some are longer, some are flattened. A few are jagged, cracked, worn from decades of grinding through armor and arrogance. One even looks like it grew sideways like a tusk that got stage fright halfway out. Odd fact break. In many prehistoric crocodiliforms, especially the more terrestrial ones, the dental arrangement was far more complex than in modern crocs. Some even developed zyphodont teeth, laterally compressed serrated edges like a steak knife that decided to grow its own legs. Shieldjaws aren't quite zyphodont, but they're close. Designed not just to kill, but to keep. Because that's the secret of his mouth, not the bite. The hold. Once inside, you don't leave. Not because you're torn apart. Because you're gripped like a locked trap. Like a sentence that doesn't end until he lets it. He shuts his jaw again. The click of tooth against tooth sounds like someone closing a door on a secret. The rain begins to let up. The scavengers, emboldened, begin to test the perimeter again. A few descend from the stone outcrop's wings, flapping lazily, eyes gleaming with cautious hunger. One even lands directly across from the carcass, pacing in short jerks like it's rehearsing bravery. Shieldjaw doesn't move. He just opens his mouth. Not to bite. Just opens it. That's when you realize something. His mouth isn't just a weapon. It's a warning sign. A billboard in bone and breath. You almost laugh. It's like one of those neon open signs outside a store, except here it means closed for everything but death. The scavenger gets the message. It stumbles backward, flaps its wings like it forgot how to fly, and vanishes into the wet sky with an offended squawk. You sit again. Everything in your body is cold and aching, but you don't want to look away. Because you're starting to understand that every part of Shieldjaw is a contradiction. He is slow, but he wins by timing. He is ancient, but he adapts with surgical precision. He does not roar, but he commands silence like a dictator of air. And his teeth? Those bizarre, worn, twisted tools. They're not beautiful, but they are effective. They were forged by diet age, accident, and victory. Historians still debate whether some of these prehistoric crocodiliforms were even crocs in the modern sense, or whether they were offshoots, experiments in body form and jaw design, abandoned by evolution but not forgotten by the bones. The fossil record is generous with jaws stingy with answers. You inch forward, eyes fixed on his mouth. He doesn't move, but you get the sense he's allowing this. The rain stops, and now you hear it again, the sound of nothing. Not silence, absence. The scavengers vanish. The wind dies. Even the insects retreat into whatever dimension they crawl in from. The only noise left is your breathing and Shieldjaw's stillness. You realize that the scariest thing in this entire story isn't the claws, the size, the teeth, the speed. It's that he doesn't make a sound when he wins. No roar, no scream, no echo, just the removal of everything else. Odd fact break. Crocodiles lack vocal cords. What noise they do make comes from air forced through the throat or by slapping water with their jaws or tails, which means they're almost always silent hunters. Even when they kill, it's rarely noisy, just final. You back away, not in fear, in respect, the kind that makes you nod without realizing it. The kind that acknowledges you're not just witnessing an apex predator, you're witnessing a presence. The mud sucks at your boots. The wind resumes soft tentative, as if asking permission to return. Shieldjaw curls his tail again, lowers his body, and settles down like the storm never happened. Like the bones beside him aren't worth mentioning. Like you're the only one still making this weirdly dramatic. You glance once more at those teeth, at that jaw. It's not designed to impress. It's designed to decide. Who stays? Who leaves? Who gets remembered in the rocks? That night you try to sleep. You really do. You find a patch of semi-dry earth, curl your spine into the shape of a question mark, and tell yourself it's just another long walk with a strange animal at the end of it. But the truth is, Shieldjaw has rearranged the way your body understands quiet. It's not that you're scared of him. It's that you finally realize something terrifying. He doesn't arrive, he just is. And what you now call silence, that's actually his footsteps. You sit upright listening. Nothing. Not birds, not bugs, not even wind through the brush. Just a single drip of water falling from a leaf. And beneath that, nothing. You know the sound of an approaching predator. You've heard it before. The crackle of twigs, the thump of padded feet, the sharp inhale of breath before the charge. But this is something else. This is the sound of a decision already made. Odd fact break. Modern crocodiles use tactile dome receptors, tiny pressure-sensitive spots on their skin to detect movement and vibration in water. Some paleontologists argue that prehistoric crocodiliforms may have had similar sensors even adapted for land. Imagine that a creature that feels your footstep before you hear it. Shieldjaw doesn't sleep like other predators. He rests, coiled loosely. Tail wrapped near his head, his eyes partially closed but never all the way. One slitted iris still catching moonlight, glinting like a buried coin just beneath the surface. You shift slightly on your rock. A twig snaps beneath your heel. It's the kind of sound you'd normally ignore, but now it feels criminal. Shieldjaw doesn't move, but you feel it. He heard that, and not with his ears. He heard it with the pads of his feet, the tension in the mud, the change in air pressure when your breath hit the night wrong. You stop breathing for a second, just to see what happens. Nothing. You exhale. Still nothing. But that's the thing. He doesn't need to do anything, because Shieldjaw, in his own quiet way, has already won the night. Historians still debate whether apex predators like this held influence through sheer physical dominance or through behavioral imprinting that is by conditioning other animals to avoid them, not through direct confrontation, but through a memory of fear passed down across generations. The answer? Yes, both. Probably more. Because what you're feeling now isn't just survival instinct, it's reverence. You watch the moon creep across the sky like a slow regret. It casts faint shadows, and in one of them you see Shieldjaw's shape stretch and soften, his tail blending into the rocks, his body merging with the ground, as if he's becoming part of the landscape again. You start to drift off, and that's when you notice something. Everything has gone completely still. No wind, no ripples. Even your thoughts seem to pause mid-sentence. You open your eyes. Shieldjaw has risen. Not all the way, just enough. Head low, tail tight, eyes wide. You whisper, "What do you hear?" But the real question is, what does he feel? The sound arrives a second later. A low thrumming like distant thunder fed through a heartbeat. You press your ear to the ground. It's not thunder. It's movement. Many footsteps. Big ones. Dinosaurs. Not predators. A herd. And not casual grazers either. These are the kind that run before something tells them to. Shieldjaw pivots slow but certain and begins to move downhill, tracing the curve of a ravine. You follow at a distance, stumbling through underbrush still wet from the rain. The herd comes into view. Massive creatures moving low to the ground, backs hunched, tails high. They're fast but not sprinting. Not yet. Shieldjaw watches from the ridge. He doesn't strike. Not now, because he knows something you don't. This isn't his hunt. This is someone else's. A new predator arrives. You don't see it at first, just flashes between trees. A tail here, a clawed hand there. Then a snout. Serrated, sleek, raptor-like. Dromaeosauridae, maybe. Something fast, something precise. It breaks from the trees with impossible speed, charging the herd, teeth flashing in a snarl that doesn't even sound real. The herd panics. Chaos erupts. You brace against a rock as dozens of tons of dinosaur thunder past, grunting, snorting, knocking branches into the dark. The predator weaves through them like a needle through fabric, nipping, slashing, separating. And still Shieldjaw waits, because this is his part of the performance. The isolated one. The smallest, slowest breaks away from the herd, veering toward the ravine in blind terror. It doesn't see him, but he sees everything. No lunge, no growl. Just a single perfect step forward. And the ravine echoes with the impact. A body slams into mud. The predator skids to a halt, startled, eyes wide. It didn't see Shieldjaw either. The two predators lock eyes. For a second, it's just standoff. The raptor backs away unsure. Then it bolts. No fight, no challenge. Just retreat. Because even the hunters know when the air is no longer theirs. Shieldjaw doesn't pursue. He never needed to. He simply resumes dragging his new prize uphill as the wind picks up again. You watch, trembling and soaked, as he disappears into the silence once more. And the only sound left is the echo of a heartbeat that was never yours. Morning doesn't so much rise as emerge, slow and reluctant, like someone tiptoeing into a room they might not be welcome in. The storm has passed, but the land is still wet with memory. Pools linger in the gullies. Mist clings to the low spaces. And in the pale orange light, the plains look different. Not empty. Reset. You stumble after Shieldjaw, who's already halfway across the horizon, dragging last night's victory behind him like it's just another Tuesday. The carcass trails mud, leaves a rut in the soft ground that will probably fossilize into something someone millions of years from now will puzzle over. You imagine them digging it up, measuring, photographing, writing polite papers about feeding traces. You smile at that. Let them try. Because you were here. You saw it. And now you're seeing something else. The return of water. The rains cracked the seal on the dry season, and already the lowlands are stirring. Rivers reawaken. Ponds refill. Insects swarm in celebratory confusion. And in the distance you spot others, things that glint, slither, shuffle, or hoot. All of them newly brave now that the land has cooled and softened. Shieldjaw feels it too. He pauses at the edge of a shallow basin, now filling with water, and steps in. It's the first time you've seen him do it. The ripple of his entry is almost spiritual, like a statue choosing to dance. The water comes to his shoulders. He lowers himself all the way, submerges, gone. You gasp. Look for bubbles. Nothing. Just silence again. Odd fact break. Modern crocodiles can slow their heart rates to just 2 or 3 beats per minute during dives, allowing them to stay submerged for over an hour. Prehistoric crocodilians likely had similar, if not more refined, cardiovascular control, especially the terrestrial species that had to cross dry and wet environments with equal ease. A ripple. He re-emerges slowly, just his nostrils and eyes visible now. The image is surreal, a creature made of rock and armor, floating effortlessly like a thought half-finished. And for the first time since you began following him, you see others. Not close, not many, but others. Crocodilian shapes smaller than him. Their heads break the surface briefly, then vanish. Juveniles rivals. Historians still debate whether crocodiliforms like Shieldjaw exhibited any social structure. There are no nests, no clear parental behavior in the fossil record. But scattered evidence of trackways grouped in clusters hints at something. Not quite a family, not quite a pack. Maybe a memory. You watch the others vanish again and Shieldjaw doesn't react. He just lies in the water like it's where he always belonged. But then a low rumble shudders the air. Thunder. No. Footsteps. Big ones. From the north. A new dinosaur enters the scene. A tower of meat and attitude. Could be a titanosaur. Could be something rarer. You squint. It's massive. 30, maybe 40 tons. Skin like parchment over tree trunks. Legs that move the ground. It walks slowly with a deliberate sway. Not a predator, but not afraid of becoming prey either. Shieldjaw lifts his head. He doesn't hide. He waits. The sauropod approaches the basin. It snorts once, then stops. Its feet sink slightly into the edge of the water. It bends its neck to drink. And that's when Shieldjaw moves. Not toward it, alongside it. A slow gliding shift through the water, barely visible. Like a shadow joining another shadow. The sauropod raises its head slightly, water dripping from its chin. And then, Shieldjaw passes it. No attack, no posturing. Just two giants recognizing the shared burden of size. Odd fact break. Crocodilians sometimes coexist peacefully with large herbivores today, hippos, buffalo, even elephants, when neither species perceives the other as a threat. It's a temporary truce based on size, food, and situational awareness. Prehistoric equivalents likely did the same, tensions managed by quiet understanding rather than teeth. You let out a breath you didn't know you'd been holding, because in that moment you expected another display of dominance. A bite, a lash of the tail, something cinematic. But what you saw instead was restraint. The sauropod walks away satisfied and unscathed. Shieldjaw climbs out of the water on the far side, shedding droplets like broken armor. His muscles roll under skin that now gleams in the soft light. He turns his head ever so slightly, and for a flicker of a moment you wonder if he sees you again. And then you hear something behind you. Another croc. Smaller. You spin heart-thudding as it slides past a juvenile maybe half Shieldjaw's size, with bright yellow eyes and a nervous posture. It doesn't come close to the big one, but it follows. Just a little. Shieldjaw doesn't look back. He doesn't have to. His legacy walks behind him, uninvited but inevitable. The plains are changing, wet now, softer, more alive. And Shieldjaw, he walks on, not as a tyrant, not as a ghost, but as a presence that the land cannot unlearn. The sun burns higher now, freshly scrubbed from the storm, painting the plains golden amber, like someone spilled fire across the horizon and forgot to clean it up. The ground is warm again, breathing steam, pulling lizards and insects from their hiding places like dancers summoned by a bell. It feels like a new world, a softer one, which is of course when things start to go wrong. You've been following Shieldjaw for what feels like days. Maybe it's been longer. Time doesn't behave out here. The only clocks are shadows and they don't like to repeat themselves. And today, for the first time, Shieldjaw is not walking in his usual way. He's dragging, subtle at first, but now it's obvious. His rear leg left side is stiff. The gait is uneven. He still moves like royalty, yes, but there's a weight to him that wasn't there before. Each step is deliberate, careful, as if he's measuring his own expiration date one footprint at a time. You scan his flank as he trudges up a slope to overlook a wide marshland. His armor still gleams in places, but there's a gash just behind his shoulder. Not bleeding, not fresh, but deep, wide. A wound that had to come from something big. You didn't see it happen, but something did. Maybe that raptor from earlier. Maybe a younger croc, or maybe just maybe another Shieldjaw. Historians still debate whether apex crocodiliforms fought over territory or hierarchy. Some track sites show overlapping stride patterns. Others suggest one dominant male in a range, but tooth marks on fossil bone. Oh, those are very real. He reaches the crest and stops. Below him, the marsh sways with the wind, wide, calm, filled with reeds and frog calls. A paradise for a recovering predator. But he doesn't descend. He just stares, as if he's not sure the ground will hold him anymore. You inch forward, keeping low, watching the tremble in his tail, the tension in his spine. He lowers his head slowly, jaw slack, eyes narrowed, not in aggression but in exhaustion. This is not just a limp. This is a reckoning. Odd fact break. Crocodiles don't heal like mammals. They lack the same kind of rapid cell regeneration for wounds, especially if they get infected. Instead, they rely on thick immune responses and sheer toughness. Some wounds never heal. They just become part of the body. The vultures notice. You spot them high above, circling wider today. Not diving. Not yet. But the circle has tightened. One dips too low, emboldened by the crooked posture below. Shieldjaw lifts his head, snaps once, and it shoots skyward like it just remembered its own mortality. Still got it. But for how long? You begin to wonder, is this it? Is this the final chapter? Is this how giants fall? Not with a roar, not with a battle, but with a stumble. And just as you think that he moves again, down the hill, into the marsh, with a kind of determination you hadn't seen before. Not pride, refusal. The water is shallow, warm. He drags his body into it like someone returning to childhood. Letting the mud coat his belly, the water cradle his weight. Relief rolls off him in waves. He lies there for a long time, breathing, blinking, bleeding slowly but still king. Until another shape appears. At first you think it's just a reflection warped by heat. But no, it's another crocodile. Smaller, sleeker, younger. It approaches from the opposite side of the marsh. And it doesn't stop. Shieldjaw lifts his head again, just slightly. And you feel it. This is not a social visit. The young one gets closer. You tense. Shieldjaw doesn't growl, doesn't posture. He simply moves. Quick! Faster than you expected from an animal whose leg screams with every step. He lashes his tail across the surface, sending a sheet of water flying into the young challenger's face. The message is clear. Not yet. But the young one doesn't back off. It opens its mouth not to strike but to display. Teeth, posture, intention. This is no ambush. This is an announcement. You realize now this is the end of something. Not the death, but the handoff. Like an aging warrior laying down his sword not because he was beaten, but because he chose to. Historians still debate whether crocodiliforms had dominance rituals, physical contests that stopped short of death. Evidence suggests some did. But most bones don't tell us the why behind the injuries, only the result. Shieldjaw stares at the young one. The young one stares back. And then, Shieldjaw turns away. Doesn't retreat, just yields. A shift of the shoulders, a low grunt, a permission. And with that, the younger croc moves past him into the center of the marsh. Shieldjaw slides into the reed's half-submerged body, easing into water like it always belonged there. The vultures don't circle anymore, because this is not death. This is succession. The young one lies in the center now, not basking, just being. Shieldjaw watches him. So do you. You're not sure if what you witnessed was ceremony, challenge, or inheritance, but it was real. And now the plain feels different again. Not ruled, balanced. By dusk, the marsh glows. The sky above you burns with that strange prehistoric pink, the kind of color that only exists in places untouched by human doubt. The frogs are loud now, the insects chant, and you're sitting on a half-submerged log watching history breathe. Shieldjaw hasn't moved in over an hour. Half his body is cloaked in reeds, his tail lazily curled around a root system that might be older than language. Only his eyes stay alert just above water, just watching. The younger croc, meanwhile, holds the center of the marsh like someone testing the fit of a throne. And somehow it fits. Not perfectly. He's twitchier. He glances around more, occasionally lifts his head too high like he's trying to be seen. But he's learning, not through imitation, through presence. And that's when it hits you. Shieldjaw didn't just rule the plains, he taught them. Taught the herds where to pause, taught the scavengers how far to approach, taught the water how to hold a ripple in reverence. And now, with that slow handover behind him, the old armored king lies back in the reeds like a ghost that never bothered dying. You glance across the plain. The kill sites are gone now, washed away, picked clean. The footprints have already begun to dry and crumble. But there is one place they've lasted. A ridge not far from here, high ground where the storm water never quite reached. You climb it. Shieldjaw doesn't follow. At the top, the light catches something in the dirt. You kneel. Footprints. Old, deep, pressed like the earth tried to remember every toe. Some lead in, some lead out. One or two are so wide they seem like mistakes. You place your hand inside one. It's still warm. Of course it isn't. But your brain insists that this is more than just sediment. This is memory made physical. The shape of something that mattered. Odd fact break: fossilized trackways are among the most valuable records in paleontology. They show behavior, speed, direction, even the relationship between animals. And unlike bones, they can capture moments. A slip, a hesitation, a sprint. You walk the ridge slowly, tracing the journey of the one who ruled. Here, a deeper press from a crouch. There, a drag mark where his tail must have swept wide. At one spot, you see smaller prints crossing his briefly, then vanishing. Maybe the juvenile, maybe a rival, maybe a memory trying to follow a legend too closely. You crouch beside this clearest one. It faces west, toward the setting sun. You wonder if he paused here once, watching the light fade the same way you are now. And you realize something else. These aren't just the marks of a predator. They're the marks of influence. Every herd path in this region skirts wide around these spots, not because they fear them, but because the instinct to do so has been passed on. Mothers teaching offspring. Eyes widening at shadows. Noses flaring near still water. Historians still debate whether predator-prey dynamics are learned or inherited, whether fear of certain creatures is biologically wired or absorbed through experience. But out here, you don't need a journal article. You just need to stand in one of Shieldjaw's steps, because the fear still echoes, not in your bones, in the land. A gust of wind picks up behind you, carries with it the scent of wet plants and reptile breath, and something older than language. You glance back at the marsh. Shieldjaw is gone. Not dramatically, just gone. The reeds don't ripple. The water doesn't splash. But his absence is louder than thunder. You scan the bank. The younger croc is still there, head raised, listening. And maybe, just maybe, learning the weight of silence. Because now the role is his. But the shape belongs to Shieldjaw. This shape in the rock, this memory in the dirt, these prints that somehow seem deeper than they were a moment ago. You sit down again and think, not about teeth, not about kills, but about how a creature with no words left behind a vocabulary anyway, and that someday someone else will find these steps, measure them, photograph them, argue over them, and miss the point entirely, because they'll study his body, but they won't feel the hush. They won't remember how even the vultures paused to think. They won't remember how the air changed when he walked by. But you will, because you were there. And the plane, it remembers too. You walk downhill slowly now, careful not to step into any of the fading prints. It feels wrong somehow, like interrupting a story that's still being whispered by the ground. Behind you, the sun dips further, melting into the haze. Ahead, the younger crocodile stays still in the marsh, his head barely above water, his reflection twitching only when a frog skitters by. And then you see it. On a nearby outcrop, basking in the last warmth of the day, a modern crocodile. Small, familiar, ordinary, nothing like Shieldjaw. Or so you think. You approach carefully, boots squelching through the reeds. This one is barely 5 feet long. Its scales glisten sharp and neat, a polished design after a long series of messy drafts. It stares at you with calm, unimpressed eyes. You kneel near it, and for a long, long moment you just stare. Its shape is perfect. Too perfect. It is the last roarless lion. Everything about it is compressed history. The flattened skull, the armored back, the mouth like a bear trap that never needed updating. All of it screams survival in the quietest voice possible. And suddenly you see them all behind it. Shieldjaw, the young successor, the limping ancestors who walked with armor before mammals ever mattered. All the versions, all the mistakes, all the victories, coiled into this quiet little reptile warming itself on a rock. Historians still debate how much of the modern crocodilian's behavior is inherited from these ancient terrestrial monsters. The body plan barely changed. The bite force remained god tier, but the personality, that's harder to track. Fossils don't record mood swings, but watching this one now, unmoving, unworried, you feel it. The patience, the silence, the judgment. It doesn't hiss. It doesn't flinch. It just looks at you like a librarian might look at a child who wandered into a restricted section and asked to borrow the apocalypse. You feel something twist in your chest, a mix of awe and guilt because we survived, and they had to shrink, to adapt, to retreat into rivers and shadows while we climbed and cooked and paved. But the shape remains, and in some strange way that's worse. It means Shieldjaw never really left. He just streamlined. You sit beside the small croc. The marsh is humming now, frogs, insects, the distant croak of something that's probably not a bird. You glance toward the tree line, half expecting the bigger one to reappear. He doesn't. Only the modern one remains, the ghost alive. And then the croc blinks, once, slow, and you swear. In that moment you can hear the scrape of heavy armor in the distance. A dragging tail, the hush before an ambush, the soft grunt of a creature deciding whether to leave you as you are or mark you as memory. Odd fact break. Crocodiles today have one of the highest survival rates among vertebrate lineages. They survived the mass extinction event that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs, not by being dominant, but by being consistent, by making just enough sense to keep existing. You exhale. The croc doesn't move, doesn't need to, because here you are sitting next to something that once ruled the land and now rules the water, not through size or speed or even cleverness, but through the absence of waste. No flash, no flare, just the ability to outlast every mistake. You stand. The croc doesn't react. You whisper, "You remember him, don't you?" But it doesn't answer. It doesn't have to. The answer is in the posture. The stillness. The golden stare unchanged for millions of years. You turn away, finally walking slow every step, feeling like the end of a myth. But as you go, you keep listening. Because you know what to listen for now. Not roars, not footsteps, just the sound of everything else getting quieter. Night returns like an old scar, not painful but noticeable. The sky deepens from blue to ink. Stars blink into view, slow and scattered. Crickets return, frogs mumble. The air cools and you find yourself walking the edge of the marsh without realizing why. Maybe you're trying to find Shieldjaw one last time. Maybe you're hoping he's still out there curled somewhere under the reeds resting like a king in shadow. But deep down you know the truth. You won't see him again. That part of the story is over. And yet something lingers. You sit down beside a shallow pool water still streaked with cloud reflections and insect ripples. You stare into it and see only yourself at first, mud-streaked, tired, changed. Then you see movement. Not Shieldjaw, but something smaller. A hatchling, maybe. Just a few feet long, eyes, bright tail twitching like it hasn't learned restraint yet. It glides past you in silence, casting no wake. Then another, then three more. A flicker of a future in miniature. You almost laugh. The plains don't wait long to fill a throne. But these aren't Shieldjaw's children. Not genetically. They're his echo. And as they vanish into the reeds, you sit back and close your eyes, listening. The wind sifts through the grasses. Water laps at the edge of the bank. The land no longer feels ruled but informed. It doesn't need teeth anymore. It has memory. Odd fact break. The oldest crocodile fossils date back over 200 million years. They've worn many shapes. Some walked on two legs, some hunted on land. Some, like Shieldjaw, existed in the blurred spaces between what we call water and earth. And yet they're still here, patient, perfectly almost the same. Historians still debate whether the land was ever truly dominated by crocodiliforms in the way it was by dinosaurs. But they missed the point. It wasn't about domination. It was about duration. You stretch your legs out, lean back on your elbows. The stars are clearer now. You imagine Shieldjaw's outline etched among them, a constellation of old armor limbs folded beneath the Milky Way. You whisper, "You were never chasing prey, were you?" And of course there's no reply. But something shifts. Not in the trees, not in the grass, in you, because you realize finally what all those long silences meant. Shieldjaw was never trying to kill the fastest. He was waiting to outlast the loudest. And now, he's still waiting. Somewhere under layers of rock, in the shape of a modern jaw, in the pause before a ripple, in the memory passed from one hoofed creature to another, warning them not to drink too carelessly. You stand up, brushing the dust from your knees. The night air hugs your shoulders. You take one last look across the water, and for the first time since you arrived, you feel like a guest who was welcome. Not because you were brave, not because you were clever, but because you listened, because you waited, because you understood that some kings rule not through thunder but through the long, quiet gravity of having been. And now the world breathes easier, because it knows it's still being watched, even if only in the shape of shadows, even if only through the echoes of footprints in stone. So this is where we leave Shieldjaw, not beneath a pile of bones or in the claws of a rival, but in something far stranger, a memory that refuses to die. He didn't roar, he didn't sprint, he didn't even chase. He waited, measured, held. And in that waiting, he shaped a world that still remembers him even if it can no longer see him. You walked his trail. You stood in the places where prey forgot to run. You listened when the wind quieted. And maybe, just maybe, you felt it too, that ancient stillness that says, "I am still here even if you are not." Because Shieldjaw wasn't just a predator. He was a force. And forces don't die. They become rules. So the next time you see a modern crocodile sunning itself on a log unbothered by your existence, blinking slower than time, it's not laziness. It's patience. It's memory. It's the faint hum of an ancient rhythm still echoing through the mud. Thank you for traveling this far back with me, for staying so long in a world that has no need for us but somehow still lets us watch. Now, take a breath. You've earned it.